Hello and welcome into the Sporting Pod. I'm Cole Pepper along with Tony Allegretti and Mauricio Ruiz. Coming up today, we are going to be talking about blue cards and if it's going to make a difference, good, bad, or otherwise in the sport of soccer. Also a little bit later on, I'm going to ask Tony Allegretti about the Burrito Gallery. Big news. Probably sad news. It certainly was for me, probably for Tony as well, but I'll ask him about that. That's all coming up. I want to remind you before we get into things here to follow us on social media, sporting_jacks, just about everywhere, and then also to subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel. And when you go to sportingjacks.com, you can become a member. It's free, give you some discounts on club merchandise, as well as enters you into all of our contests for chances to win great prizes and experiences. And it's a great way for you also to sign up there to get our weekly email newsletter that keeps you updated on what's going on here with the club. And you can put down your deposit for season tickets there as well. All right, gentlemen, the blue card. In the past, there have been suggestions of orange cards, and I think maybe indoor soccer used an orange card at one point. I can't recall, but the theory of the blue card is that there are some fouls that deserve something more than a yellow, but not all the way to a red, and that this gives referees another tool in terms of enforcing the laws of the game. So the lawmakers of the game are putting this into effect as sort of an experimental approach at some of the lower leagues. It won't be at like the Premier League and won't be at the Champions League and that sort of thing, but they'll experiment with it, much as baseball did with the pitch clock in the minor leagues before implementing it in the major leagues. So let me start with you, Mauricio, as a guy who has coached and played, and you've probably had a foul committed against you that was particularly, some might call it a tactical foul, or maybe you were the last man in to goal, or seen somebody else, not certainly you, ever dissent to an official. But these are the kinds of things that a blue card would ostensibly be used for. We don't know all the details just yet, but what's your impression about the impact that a blue card and its usage? Because this would be different than a red card, or a red card sends a player off for the game. A yellow card's the warning. A blue card would send the player to the penalty box, the sin bin, for 10 minutes the first time. Second time, it's treated like a red. So how will this impact the game?
Well, first of all, I'm glad that you think that's someone. You wouldn't assume that I'm the one that's actually performing something that would warrant a red card or potentially a blue card here, because I am very gentle.
Of course, I would not. I would never have insinuated the /S for sarcasm in my comments.
But I would definitely be the recipient of someone trying to stop or trying to attack me in some way, shape, or form. So, I actually had some experience with that, similar to hockey, right? There's a penalty box, and I played in the major indoor soccer league where blue cards were a thing. And he brought excitement to the game, right? I mean, it was a 2-minute thing, and then eventually a 5-minute thing for your second, caution. But it was exciting, but it was also a league that was trying to create excitement, trying to kind of come into the market. Not to say that soccer, professional soccer at the European level or the world stage level needs additional excitement. But I think it does keep up with the trend of evolution of any of the games, right? And I think soccer for a long time did stop in time. And now you start seeing the goal line technology, which has been well received. VAR is still a long way from being perfect. I don't think it'll ever be perfect, but they're talking about microchips on the ball now for the Euro Cups that are going to be a lot more accurate. They're going to be able to use referees to ultimately have the final decision. But I like the blue card concept. I think like anything else, when it gets implemented, there's going to be growing pains with it, ultimately because we want to see the game run. And I think statistically talking today, the amount of time that the ball is rolling on the field is limited. You're talking about less than 45 minutes combined based on style, especially if you go to South America, right, where I'm from in Brazil. Like it's horrible to watch those games because time spent on the actual game running based on fouls and things of that sort. I think the blue card will help increase minutes of balls rolling, whatever that indication is. So I'm all for entertainment. We're paying tickets to go to the games. We're watching them on demand. We're passionate about it. The amount of money that's in the game now to watch people just fouling each other and not see the game get played. So I'm for the idea of it. I don't know if I have the answer to exactly how to implement that. I have some other ideas that that I kind of share of how to make the game more exciting and less players rolling on the ground. So I like the concept of it, and I think you will impact, as a kind of to the point that I'm making, more game activity, right? Because if you are having the opportunity, if you players don't get carded, but you also know there's an additional penalty for fouling, you're going to be less inclined to foul potentially. And red cards, as we know, sometimes they're discussable, right? They're not even with VAR. So I think this limits those games that are running really well and VAR or the referees make a mistake and now the game completely changed on its head because of a foul that potentially wasn't a red, but that's the only two options they have. You already have a yellow. What's next? It's a red. So can we keep the game rolling? Can we keep the entertainment high? And I think blue card will help bridge a little bit of that gap.
Also, and I don't know the answer to this, but I don't know if a yellow card and then a blue card equals a red card. I think it probably does. It's being treated, in terms of accumulation that way, but a lot of details to be sussed out. Tony, I'm not sure what side of this I feel right now. I'm not sure this is a problem that is actually a problem that they're addressing. I do think it will create more, you're talking about basically a power play for 10 minutes or something. And, we've seen teams play a man down for any number of reasons, injury or otherwise. I'm not sure that this is really addressing the issue unless they're mostly concerned about dissent, in which case, sending a guy off for 10 minutes, maybe he cools down. But I haven't seen that as a major problem in soccer, at least at the highest levels.
Yeah, so I'm happy to defer a lot of this to Mauricio, who's much more involved in sort of the tactical soccer side of it. My first job growing up was as a referee, and you learn the laws. There's a reason they're called the laws of soccer, because they're just older than, they like Canterbury Tales era, So I always bristle and have through the years. I'm old enough to remember, kicking it back to the goalkeeper, or like the one that just drives me crazy. That's a newer one is the linesman waits to put his offside flag up. That one baffles my mind. I have no idea why they do that, and it just seems really dumb. This one, and again, it's the global conspiracy against Everton. I've never seen such a flagship move, to make it a blue card is really upsetting.
I thought you'd like it because there's already been a red card, so there's a Liverpool thing. Now you got to get your card in there.
All right, I'm going to eject you. You're getting a blue card. But I also worry, we have so much time wasting in the game right now. If you're up a goal or you're sitting on a draw with a team that's supposed to beat you, how long are your throw-ins going to take? Your ball boy is really going to be working that clock if your main your best players sitting in the sin bin. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think jury's out on it, and if we have had no refereeing controversies over the last few years, then I'd probably be less abrasive about it. But my club is the only club in top level football in all of Europe that hasn't even gotten a pen this year. Like, we have not been awarded a penalty, and it's amazing.
Yeah, conspiracy for sure.
It's a conspiracy. Yeah. Thank you, Mauricio. Confirmed. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan, but like everything else, what are you going to do? They've made this decision, and I'll be right there to complain about it.
I guess my point on this, and any substantial rules change in any sport, is if you're going to implement it as an experimental thing, then be open to not taking the exact program and implementing into the higher levels. I'll use one example: the 3-point line in college basketball. Of course, it was not in the NBA for years, and then the ABA started using it. The NBA, after the merger, decided to put it in, but the colleges were experimenting with this. And in the ACC, I think it was 18 feet 2 inches or something. It was inside the top of the key. This is a just a little bit more than a free throw was a 3-pointer. Well, they experimented with that, and everybody realized everybody in the gym could shoot that, so they moved it back to 19-9, which was basically at the top of the key, and that was the original NCAA size. So they did take some of that experimentation and play with it. Now they've moved it back a little bit further because they want to create other opportunities for players in the lane. And again, the 19-9 kind of seemed a little easy, so they moved it back closer in line with the international line. So by that, and the pitch clock in baseball the same way. Instant replay in the NFL, obviously, is something that, as long as they continue to tweak the process and figure out how that is, I'm okay with it. But that also means being okay with saying, you know what, this really isn't working the way we want to, so getting rid of it. Now, that eliminates some continuity, and there'll be some players who probably will be okay with getting sent off for 10 minutes. Older players who maybe could use a little breather so they can play the full 90. There may be some cynical fouls committed as far as that's concerned, and we can do a lot of what ifs, and so I'll do a couple of them here, Mauricio. If you're a coach, would there be a time where you would say to a player to go get a blue card or go try to, knowing that if a referee had that option, he's more likely to pull the blue than the red if he thinks it's one of those things where it's 50-50 kind of call. And do you think there's enough room between a yellow card and a red card for a foul that there should be another level of enforcement?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons this blue card will implement and will help the game, it's in those tactical fouls in the middle of the field, right? Those counterattack fouls that slow down the play, but you're still 60 plus yards away from actual goal scoring opportunity. But if you are on a yellow and you get a blue card and you get your second yellow because you clearly pulled a player's jersey, that's a red card. And what if that happens with still 30 minutes left in the game and the game was 1-0 for the opposition, and you didn't want to make it 2-0, well, the 10 minutes probably, you got to pack it in for 10 minutes, and you'll take that, right? So a coach will be okay with a player that is on a yellow. And once again, we don't know the accumulation of a yellow plus a blue, what happens. But I would be okay with a player taking a blue card in an instance like that where it's not what they call a goal scoring opportunity, a gonk, whatever they kind of have acronyms for now. It's funky. But those are circumstances that you will be okay. I would also be okay with a ref giving a player a blue card off of dissent that doesn't warrant a red card, but the player needs to learn how to cool down. It's not appropriate in the game. Too many cameras, too many kids watching games to see players behave in inappropriate behavior. They wouldn't be allowed to do that in a corporate law job or corporate office. At school, why are we looking up to these players that I know emotion and passion, this and that, but these are some of our models, and some of these are, our examples, and they're throwing a penny up there, and that should be a blue card, right? There's going to be consequences for you dissenting and getting in coaches and players and referees' face. So I'm okay with the referee exercising a blue card in that instance without penalizing the game for the entertainment value. Which ultimately that's what happens. One player has a personal or loss of control moment, and he changes the whole game, right? And I think the accumulation of blue cards is something that will kind of come in. 5 yellows is suspended for a game. How many accumulated blue cards get suspended for a game? Because you can't just keep giving cards as a method, right?
Yeah, I want to see stats. We got so many stats in the game right now. I want to see stats of how many people get injured when their team's sitting on a blue card. If you start writhing around on the ground, everybody gets injured when they're ahead, or if they're hanging on and they're trying to waste time. We're gonna have, in my opinion, it's gonna be Qatar-like extra time, where it's just 20 more minutes because we've wasted time
because this Brazilian's rolling around on the deck.
I wasn't gonna throw any nationality under the bus, but
they're not playing for Everton. That's for sure.
No, not anymore. Sadly, we've sold all our Brazilians.
Yeah, but that goes into like how to make the game more exciting, right? So then I go back to my original statement of run a play. So there has been enough conversation around blue card, around accumulated fouls, right? That kind of gives you a free shot, but also of a running 60-minute clock, right? Where if the game is really only running about 45 minutes now as it is, a running 60-minute clock, 90 minutes plus additional time is become an issue, right? It increases injury. So if you're only really playing about 45-something minutes, well, then do 2 30-minute halves, but it's a running clock, and give conditions to players that are, give caution to players that are delaying time, because then all of a sudden you don't have that delay time. You're not going to be able to solve both equations, but how do you decrease the gap of time wasting and injuries and things how do you not believe a player when he's rolling 75 times on the ground? I'm not thinking about Neymar here, but it's
the one name that you had to say one way or another.
I would not. Yeah, that's not the case here, but it's true, right? Like, how do we just make the game more about what the game was, which is about playing? The game is too fast, it's too energetic, but it's also a little too long now. Right, so how do maybe it's not too long, maybe our attention span is shorter. Mm-hmm. So how do we compact the game back to the baseball kind of, the pitch clock? So I like these ideas. I think some people are like, well, the game is beautiful, let's leave it the way it is. Well, we also, we have to ride a horse everywhere back in the day, right? Like, no, let's not leave it the way it is. There's technology that allows things to improve. So I'm all for that conversation. What does it look like? To your point, I think there's going to be a lot of errors made in that process, as long as they're humble enough to say, okay, we need to fix this. And I think they're doing that with VAR a little bit. Probably more transparency in the VAR process will be welcome. I think some leagues are going to start releasing the audio in game or even on TV, so we can kind of clear up that transparency.
Yeah, I would categorize myself in general as a sports conservative, where I don't want sweeping changes in sports, because I don't think once you start making these mass overhauls of sports, you're just inventing a new sport based on the previous. But I also am not a traditionalist, where you've just got to keep it the way it is. I do think society, the expectations of it as a business, as a form of entertainment, as a show, has to come into it. I'm not mad at Nickelodeon having the Nickelodeon broadcasts of NFL games. I'm not watching it, but I'm also not a 7-year-old kid. I still want to watch the way that I've watched it, but having the first down line, or having more advanced stats and the different ways to understand what's happening in the game, I think are real positives.
So you don't like the Manning cast, where they just talk throughout the entire game with only a little bit of a corner?
Honestly, I do like the Manning cast, and because if I'm not personally invested in that game, if it's not a game that I really care that much about the outcome, but I'm enjoying the competition, I think those guys keep it interesting. Mm-hmm. It's fun, but I don't want that to replace. Sure. Right. I want it to be a supplement, another option as part of the triple cast. Somebody should write that down somewhere. All right, as promised, I'm going to ask Tony Allegretti. Can I properly call you founder or co-founder of Burrito Gallery?
I'm one of the founders.
One of the founders of the Burrito Gallery downtown. And for those of you who have not been to the Burrito Gallery, let me try to describe it. Art on the walls, great tacos and burritos and such. Fantastic bar, cool little outdoor space as well for out on the porch. And downtown, particularly when I was working downtown or at the stadium in the past, frequented that quite a bit. Pre-kids frequented it more than I have post-kids. But one of the cool spots downtown, and Tony was one of the people responsible for getting that thing launched. Recently, this week, closed down. So, Tony, you want to give some perspective on this? And I know it must have been a very difficult decision for you and the rest of the people involved to say goodbye to the original Burrito Gallery.
No, I don't want to talk about it.
All right. Well, that'll do it.
No, thanks, Cole. Mostly what I want to do is I want to thank all of the probably hundreds of thousands of people who darkened the door and came into the Burrito Gallery and had food and or drink there. I think of all the family of employees over the years. We've had some real all-stars in terms of people who kept that place going. I mean, when we first opened, I think the first year we'd have never made it without the Public Defender's Office. So shout out to them, Academy Award winning crew there. But we had an amazing run, and things really started to change after the pandemic, and it was really difficult. And the food and beverage industry is just really difficult right now. But in a downtown like ours, when the workforce hasn't fully come back, and when there's more competition, there's food trucks now, and there's lots of new restaurants, and so it kind of bites into that. The demolition of the courthouse and the old City Hall Annex. I mean, we're going back, but it really does sort of erode the walkable, universe of people that can come down, and it was becoming very expensive to try to keep it going, and so it will be something new. It's got a great sense of place. I posted on my Twitter about how many things that building has been, and it's been some amazing things. So it'll be something new and something exciting. In the meantime, you can still support Indochine. Indochine will stay, and so that's something that you can do. And we'll have more news on the building itself and what's going to happen downstairs in the coming weeks. But I just mostly want to say thank you to all of the patrons and people who supported the Burrito Gallery for all those years.
Yeah, it was definitely a cool place. It opened in
2006. It opened right before the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's it. Right. And I do recall it was part of One Spark. It was big. There was a lot of activity around there early on, too, that helped kind of launch it into the public awareness.
Yeah, One Spark for sure. Every art walk, it used to have a line out there. Well, lunch, it used to have the line out the door. But back to the very first couple nights, I remember Jeremiah Trotter coming in for shots before the Super Bowl. And they ended up losing. So I feel like I can say that now that it's not open anymore. I won't get in trouble. But the celebrities, I mean, from George Romero had a private dinner there one time. The director, Ed Begley Jr. has a favorite. But a lot of the artists that play at the Florida Theater would order BG when they came to town. It was a great. It was a great era, and I've been touched by all of the sentiment online. So thank you, everyone, and we appreciate you, and we'll see you at the next endeavor.
I mean, 18 years in the same location in any restaurant is a pretty impressive run, in particular in this day and age. As you mentioned, all the issues with people working from home. You don't have as many people working downtown, so you don't have the walk-in for lunch. And it has been, and if you've asked anybody who works in the restaurant business, particularly in ownership or management, you know how tough it is right now from a staffing standpoint and everything else. So congratulations on building something great, Tony, and we look forward to what's coming in there next. The next thing that Tony is building great, of course, Sporting Jacks. So that'll do it for us here on this edition of the Sporting Pod. Be sure to share this with your friends. If they'd like to subscribe, we'd love to continue building the community around Sporting Jacks. For Tony Allegretti and Mauricio Ruiz, I'm Cole Pepper. Thanks for listening to the Sporting Pod.